Good morning. My name is George Roberts, and I'm the principal of Perry Hall High School. It is my honor this morning to welcome Secretary Arne Duncan and our special guest and teachers to Perry Hall High School. It is now my pleasure to introduce the Baltimore County Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. S. Dallas Dance.
Good morning, Team BCPS. I don't know about you, but this is an exciting day here in Baltimore County Public Schools to welcome Secretary Duncan to be a member of Team BCPS. This morning, I would like to introduce several individuals from our delegation who are spend some time with us this morning. If you would please stand, I would ask everyone if you would hold your applause until I've actually introduced everyone. Senator Kathy Klossmeyer, would you please stand? Tammy Larkin for Senator Jennings. Aresta Shaw, the Educational Liaison for our County Executive, Kevin Kamenetz. Councilman David Marks. Councilwoman Kathy Bevins. Larry Schmidt, President of the Baltimore County Board of Education. Valerie Roddy, Vice President of the Baltimore County Board of Education. Mr. Mike Bowler, Board of Education member. And Mr. David Uhlfelder, Board of Education member. It is exciting this morning. The Secretary, please join me in congratulating them. Again, Team BCPS welcomes Secretary Duncan to join us here this morning. I know all of you are excited. I don't know if you're how I am, but I'm counting that we have 5 days remaining before we welcome 106,000 Baltimore County students back to our door. So I am counting down the days, and I know you are too. At this point, I would like to introduce the Maryland State Superintendent, Dr. Lillian Lowry.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to be back in Baltimore County. Last week, I believe it was last week, I was here with Dr. Dance welcoming almost 700 new teachers. It is my privilege this morning to be able to introduce to some and reacquaint with others our United States Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. When I first began my work on the state level, one of my U.S. senators had coordinated a call with Secretary Duncan and me. And one of the questions he put before Secretary Duncan is, when you were in Chicago, superintendent of the third largest system in the United States of America, doing amazing work, making sure that every child's future was being prepared as best as it could be, how did you get some of that work done? What did you do to get your teachers on board with you? And Secretary Duncan's answer was very simple. He said, I talked to my teachers. I knew that we couldn't get this work done if we didn't have the most important person in all of the work that we're doing to continue to improve our schools and the futures of our students. If we didn't have the teachers there, that's the most critical relationship in all of this work. And I listened to him, and I formed an advisory group of our Teachers of the Year. And we'll be working with the Teachers of the Year here. So when the Secretary comes out and talks about Project Respect, it is more than just an acronym. It really is his passion, is who he is. He understands, because he led the work now at both the local and national level to improve our schools for our students, knowing that we can't do that if we don't respect our teachers, listen to their voices, and pull from their experience. That's why it is so amazingly interesting for me, and I am so overwhelmed to be able to work with this administration under the leadership of Secretary Duncan to do great things for our students and all of you. With pleasure and privilege, I now present to you our United States Secretary of Education, the Honorable Arne Duncan.
Good morning, Dr. Lowry. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. As you guys get to know her, I think you'll see what an amazing gem you have. I was thrilled to work with her when she led the Delaware Race to the Top effort, and obviously there's so much great work going on in Maryland. I think Lillian's going to take it to the next level. I'm thrilled to be here. I know you got a lot going on. I appreciate the opportunity. Having school starting in a couple days, I know those butterflies and all the mad scramble right before you start back up. But I thought it was really important to come out because after 3+ years in Washington, our team thought it was a great time to take stock of where we're going as a country, where we've been and where we want to go. And now I can stand up here and sell you on the importance of reform. I can get all hyped up about how we're falling behind other countries. I've said those things probably 1,000 times, and I absolutely believe that. Reform is important, and in several key areas, unfortunately, America is slipping. And that's why President Obama spent $60 billion to keep teachers in the classroom. That's why he's calling for another $25 billion right now to try and protect teacher jobs. And that's why year after year, he's protected education from harsh budget cuts. And that's why he's pushed a bold agenda for change. He fundamentally believes in education as the pathway out of poverty and the pathway to a strong and secure future. And we both believe that teachers are the heart and soul of our education system, and that our collective success as a country is entirely dependent on your success as a teacher in the classroom. You are doing the hard, critically important work every single day. And no matter what happens at the federal and at the state or at the local level, it only matters if it works in your classrooms. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for doing this work. Thank you for taking on the immense responsibility of educating our children. Nothing is more important to our collective future, to our economic security, and even to our national security. Secondly, I want to try and share the truth as I see it. And I won't sugarcoat facts or paint a fantasy where every child's social and emotional needs are always being met in their homes, and the learning environment in every school is perfectly suited to support your work each day. That's not our children's reality. I know sometimes that's not your reality. We live in an imperfect world. Some children are challenged by poverty, by neighborhood or family issues that are sometimes almost unimaginable. Some schools are underfunded. Some principals are overwhelmed, and some teachers feel unsupported. They're also tired of feeling attacked. And yet, even in those circumstances, you are helping kids learn in remarkable ways. Every single day, in classrooms all across America, students are overcoming huge barriers and succeeding because of caring and devoted teachers. I've been to 47 states over the past 3 years, inner cities, suburban communities, small towns, Native American reservations, and remote communities in places like Alaska. We flew there in a small plane that literally had duct tape on the wings. Can't make those kinds of things up. I remind you about that, and that my sport is basketball, not skydiving. And I don't even like jumping very high. I might be the only 6'4" basketball player who can't dunk a ball. But I went to those states and those communities and saw people doing extraordinary things. And it always both gives me hope and affirms for me the generous and the giving nature of people who choose to go into education. Teachers want to make a difference in the lives of others. They get their greatest reward by helping their students to discover themselves, to find their voice, and develop into self-confident and well-directed adults. You simply can't say that about every profession. Other people might be motivated by money, or power, or ego, or that large corner office. But teachers are uniquely driven by the desire to help others, not themselves, to help others succeed. Teaching, as all of you know, is really hard work that requires creativity, knowledge, skills, and empathy, the kind of emotional intelligence that can't readily be acquired. It comes from your heart. And that's your strength, but it also makes you vulnerable when educational decisions beyond your control somehow feel wrong. You give your life to this work, and you don't want to see it go off track. This is your craft, and you know what is needed. So today, I want to have an open and an honest conversation. I'll share a few thoughts, and I want to take your questions and hear from you, and hopefully improve our common understanding of what we can all do together to get better and to give all of our children the chance they desperately need to be successful. Over the past 3 years, there have been at least 3 really significant developments in K-12 education. The first is that all but a handful of states have raised standards in an effort to prepare children for both college and careers. The internationally benchmarked Common Core standards were developed by educators on behalf of states, and they've been reviewed extensively, and they generally get high marks, higher than most standards, and comparable to the best, not just in this country, but across the globe. Now they're going out into the field, which means that you, teachers and principals and administrators, will have to figure out what this means in your classrooms. How will this affect curriculum? How will it change your daily lesson plans? Will you have more autonomy or less? How can you learn from and share with your colleagues, not just here in Baltimore County and within the state, but now across the country? When children are assessed against new higher standards, how will parents and teachers and schools react? If scores drop, as they may, will everyone feel deflated and beaten down, or will we all be inspired to work even harder? And when the shelf life of so many education reforms is so brief, how will we know that high standards that truly prepare young people for college and careers will take root and become the norm, not just for the privileged, but for all? We never know what the future holds, but this country is now committed to high standards, and I think that's a great thing. It's one issue that Republicans and Democrats, parents and teachers, employers and higher education can all agree on. The fact is today, 25% of our nation's high school students don't graduate from high school. About half of all students who go on to community college, those who do graduate from high school, half of them in community college actually need remedial education. And over 90 million adults in America have limited literacy skills. Our families, our communities, and our country deserves better. And we simply won't change those numbers without high standards and high expectations. One of the many negative side effects of No Child Left Behind is that too many states actually lowered standards, dummied down standards, in order to meet the goal of getting every single child to proficiency by 2014. It's a noble goal, and the fact that we're falling short does not mean the goal is wrong, and it doesn't mean that we've failed. It just means we have more work to do, because we're committed to all children, regardless of their talents, interests, family background, or challenges. Nevertheless, the 2014 goal, along with the mandates and the punitive sanctions in No Child Left Behind, put a lot of pressure on schools and teachers. In some cases, we saw far too much focus on test prep and a narrowing of the curriculum. Those are not good outcomes for children, for education, or for the country, and it's not a good use of your time either. You didn't go into education in order to teach children how to pass the bubble test. And you don't want an accountability system that labels improving schools as failures or ignores the challenges that children bring into the classroom. Teachers, principals, all of us really want a system that's fair, that's honest, and that's realistic. And this has led to the second really big thing that has happened on our watch, and that's No Child Left Behind waivers, flexibility from the law. We tried really hard to get Congress to fix the broken No Child Left Behind law and to make it more fair and flexible and focused on the children most at risk. Right now, unfortunately, as you know, Congress is pretty broken as well. And as President Obama has said repeatedly, we simply can't wait for Congress to act. So we use our authority to offer flexibility to states willing to change. Basically, we said to states, if you raise standards, if you set performance targets that are both ambitious and achievable, and design local interventions that focus closely on the neediest children, in exchange for doing that and for protecting kids and setting a high bar, we'll give you much, much more flexibility with our funds and give you the chance to create your own state-designed accountability system. We also ask states to come up with a better way to support teachers and principals. Look at annual student growth and progress rather than just a proficiency or a cut score, and use other measures of effectiveness like classroom observation, peer review, parent and student feedback. We further encourage states to develop new ways to support and evaluate teachers in all subjects: the arts, foreign languages, science, history, physical education. Our children need what we call a well-rounded, world-class education. We didn't eliminate testing because we believe it is important to measure progress. We need to know who is ahead and who is behind, who is succeeding and who needs more support. And in an ideal world, that data should also drive instruction and drive meaningful job-embedded professional development for each and every one of you. We absolutely understand that standardized tests don't begin to capture all of the subtle qualities of successful teaching. And that's why we always call for multiple measures in evaluating teachers, schools, districts, and states themselves. We're also hopeful that new assessments under development will better reflect the tremendous impact of your work, but those assessments are still a couple years away. In the meantime, dozens of states have seized the opportunity for flexibility with interventions and a chance to set new performance targets, obviously including right here in Maryland. A few states are staying with the current law, and that's absolutely their choice. We're for flexibility, as long as we have the common goal of giving every child a college and career-ready education. Overall, more than 60% of schools in America now have a new accountability system in place. Those systems are both realistic and ambitious, that capture more kids at risk than NCLB ever did. And we expect that number to go even higher. Now, the third big thing that's going to happen is a very robust national conversation around teaching and school leadership. And this conversation, we believe, is long overdue. It's not an easy conversation either. It requires principals and teachers to look hard at themselves and ask, what would it take for us all to get better? The conversation started around teacher evaluation, but is now smartly expanded to cover a full range of issues like teacher prep, meaningful PD, career ladders, tenure, and compensation. Everyone is a part of this conversation, including unions and administrators and school boards. At a groundbreaking conference we hosted in Cincinnati last May, leaders from the NEA, the AFT, and the national associations representing school boards, superintendents, and chief state school officers in large urban districts all came together and all publicly signed a document spelling out 7 principles for reforming the teaching profession. I believe this document is truly historic. Created with a united front and a real sense of collaboration, it provides a strong foundation for comprehensive reform, focusing on shared responsibility and accountability, school culture, teacher leadership, community engagement, career pathways, and all the elements needed for success. Most important, teachers themselves are at the heart of this national conversation. Teachers are driving this dialogue. With the help of our fantastic Teacher Ambassador Fellows, active classroom teachers who take a year to work with us at the Department of Education, last year we held over 200 roundtables across the country with more than 3,500 teachers to shape a new vision for the teaching profession. We call this, as Lillian talked about, the Respect Project, and the results are on our website. It's closely aligned to the vision document signed by all of us in Cincinnati, especially the focus on shared responsibility. And we invite all of you to join in this critically important national dialogue. In fact, our teaching fellows are going to stick around today after this and hold some roundtables and listen for your ideas. Please tell us your vision for the profession and think through with us how we can get there. The hard questions are the ones that are so important. How do we change teacher prep programs to better prepare all teachers for the classroom? How do we change recruiting and mentoring and induction so that new teachers feel supported instead of isolated and overwhelmed? How do we ensure that our nation's teachers reflect the great diversity of our nation's students? How do we build career pathways where great teachers who want to can stay in the classroom and earn salaries that are competitive with other valued professions like medicine and law? All of you know what success looks like. You know what it would take to transform the field. And to be very clear, we're not looking for incremental change here. This effort is much more ambitious than that. And you definitely know what you want in your school, in your classroom, whether it's more time to plan and to collaborate, more support from school leaders, or more autonomy to structure your time in ways to best serve your students. And as I've said repeatedly, you also deserve much better pay, especially when it's tied to effectiveness and taking on tough assignments. I know that none of you went into education to get rich, but you shouldn't have to take a vow of poverty either. Teachers' salaries must be on par with other professions. So we've asked Congress for $5 billion to get the ball rolling, and we're directing other funding streams to support this work. But ultimately, this will play out really importantly at the state and at the local level, which funds the bulk of public education. Your voice in rebuilding and renewing your profession is so important, and the opportunity has never been greater or more urgent. Almost half of our existing teachers, are set to retire over the next decade, and more than 1 million new people will come into this field. It is literally a once-in-a-generation opportunity. But the challenges are very real. Today, as you know, half of the young teachers who come into the field leave within 5 years. That's simply unacceptable. And far too many other bright young people don't even consider teaching, either because salaries are too low, opportunities for advancement are limited, or working conditions are too difficult. As a country, we're beginning to change those dynamics, and teachers are leading the change through their unions, through school efforts or individually, and through grassroots groups like Teach Plus and Educators for Excellence. Meanwhile, everyone is working harder than ever before to figure out how to raise standards. Right here in Maryland, the state held a conference last summer with 6,000 teachers to discuss implementation of the Common Core. Maryland held regional meetings and sponsored conferences to familiarize teachers with Common Core content. They've developed and posted online lessons. This fall, Maryland will field test teacher and principal evaluations based on multiple measures and fine-tune it before implementation. To shape this new system of evaluation, Maryland established an educator effectiveness council with unions, teachers, superintendents, school board members, and academics. Under its NCLB waiver, Maryland has ambitious new goals to reduce achievement gaps by half within 6 years, by asking districts to develop locally designed plans for improvement. Now, I'm absolutely convinced Maryland is poised to literally lead the country where we need to go. But no one thinks this work will be easy. There will absolutely be stumbles, maybe even a few wrong turns, and the transition to higher standards will be choppy for everyone, teachers and administrators, parents and students. But we can't give up. We have to keep trying, keep getting better, keep pushing ourselves, and keep pushing each other. And when we encounter obstacles, we have to go over them, around them, or through them. We can't stop. Let me tell you about another state, Tennessee, which was also a Race to the Top winner, like Maryland. A year ago, Tennessee put in place a statewide evaluation system, and there was actually tremendous resistance. But instead of digging in their heels or retreating, the Tennessee Department of Education did the unthinkable for a government agency. They actually asked for feedback. They met with 7,500 teachers around the state and surveyed 16,000 teachers and 1,000 administrators. They actually adapted and changed based upon that very candid feedback, and the results are already promising. Meanwhile, a wonderful art teacher there in Memphis named Drew Davison was so frustrated by his proposed evaluation that he also did the unthinkable. Along with his fellow art educators and the support of the Hope Street group, he created his own art education evaluation system based on ideas and feedback from himself and from his peers. And that system he developed was so popular and so effective that the entire district adopted it, and now the state of Tennessee is looking to adopt it statewide. That is the kind of initiative that we want to support all across the country. Teachers rebuilding their own profession, holding themselves and each other accountable, shaping their future in the classroom. And we need this to proceed as quickly as possible. Your fantastic new superintendent, Dallas Dance, talks about deliberate excellence. He knows our children only have one chance at a quality education. Dr. Martin Luther King talks so often about the fierce urgency of now. President Obama authorized waivers because we can't wait for a divided Congress to act and fix a law like No Child Left Behind that is so fundamentally flawed. Every day matters. Every day counts. And that's why, as a country, we're asking more of ourselves, more of our principals and administrators, more of our students, more of their parents, more of you. We're asking more from all of us, because this is what it takes to get better. This is what it takes to fulfill the true promise of public education. And this is what our children desperately need. Change is always hard, and top-down accountability too often feels punitive. At the end of the day, real accountability comes from within, from teachers holding themselves to high standards, because they take their profession seriously and want to see their children succeed. Let me tell you about a couple of extraordinary teachers I've met. Jamie Iris is a math teacher in New Orleans. He started teaching in the Bronx in New York, but like many young teachers, he struggled with low-income children. He felt overwhelmed. He switched for a brief time to a private school, but then he felt like he'd lost his purpose. He finally found it again in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. He chose to work with the kids that so many others had literally abandoned. He knew they were way behind, but he challenged them to outperform the selective enrollment school not too far from his. He calls his students the Orange Crush. He wears an orange jumpsuit to inspire them. Most important, he's reaching his students. Children who not too many people believed in before are starting to believe in themselves. His students are the fastest gaining children in the system, and he's been named Teacher of the Year in New Orleans. He's been awarded the Fishman Prize for teaching by the New Teacher Project. That prize is named for a current math teacher in DC, a young woman named Shira Fishman. She's a former engineer who felt unfulfilled in that profession, and she decided to go into teaching 9 years ago. She is the highest rating of any teacher in DC. She's the Teacher of the Year, and she's also a Milken Award winner. She's also a mentor to young teachers, and she coaches the school basketball team. She took a big pay cut to teach, and I'm sure, like some of you, had to supplement her income by waiting tables. How many doctors and lawyers have to wait tables on the side? She acknowledges that teacher evaluation is stressful, but it's necessary. In her own words, she says, teachers who are struggling need to be helped. The ones who are continuously ineffective need to find a different career because it's not good for the kids. Those that are good need to be acknowledged and used by the school and the district to help everyone get better. Her philosophy of teaching is equally clear. It's all about high expectations. She believes that if we keep raising the bar, our children will get over, but only if we help them overcome their fear of failure. Here in Baltimore County and all across America, there are teachers like Shira Fishman, giving everything they have to their children and asking for nothing in return but appreciation for their hard work and respect for their profession. And I have one last teacher story from right here in Maryland that illustrates the spirit, the passion, and the persistence of our fantastic classroom teachers. Maddie Hennington teaches English in Gaithersburg. She was raised in the projects. Her parents are immigrants from Puerto Rico, and she fundamentally understands what it takes to help kids of color achieve. She took a middle school troublemaker who was on a path to failure and literally turned him into a science fair winner. More often than not, she dug into her own pocket for his lunch money when he didn't have enough to eat. Maddie is also a Milken Award winner. Her students are performing extraordinarily well. She runs a book club for Latina girls, and she's a mentor to her colleagues. She's everything we could want in a teacher, and she's one of over 3 million reasons why this administration has the deepest respect and appreciation for you and your collective work. We believe in you and in the amazing power of education to transform lives. We know the quality of the school system is only as good as the quality of its teachers and leaders, and we consider it our solemn duty to support you and to honor your extraordinary work. We also know that many of the changes underway are difficult and will take time, but we all have to meet this challenge together because the children who will be in front of you on Monday only get one chance to get a great education. So as you begin the school year, please know that we are absolutely confident in you and in your ability to give all our children the one thing in life they desperately need, a world-class, well-rounded education. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you, Secretary Duncan, for your presentation. Teachers will now have the opportunity to ask Secretary Duncan questions regarding the RESPECT program and his comments this morning. Staff will assist teachers to the microphones positioned at either end of the rows to pose your question to the Secretary.
My name is Harry Cook, and I'm chairman of the English department at Eastern Technical High School. And Secretary Duncan, many of your remarks this morning dealt with equitable rewards for those dedicated to teaching. Under the topic compensation, lines 332 to 339 in the RESPECT document, appears this statement. In our vision, starting salaries for fully licensed professional teachers should be $60,000 to $65,000, adjusted as appropriate to the cost of living in different regions. Additionally, salaries would increase faster than they do today. Master teachers and other teacher leaders would have the ability to earn as much as $120,000 to $150,000 after about 7 to 10 years, unquote. Considering the fiscal realities faced by school systems across the country, does USDE have any thoughts about how local jurisdictions would be able to pay for these increased salaries and the impact that that would also have on retirement systems?
So it's a great question, and let me just start with the fundamental premise. I just believe what I said at the beginning. We desperately underpay educators in this country and have for a long time. And I can't tell you how many young folks I talk to, 27, 28, 29, who love teaching leave when they want to start a family or buy a home. I can't tell you how many young people, I go out to college campuses all the time to recruit, and lots of folks say it's in their heart, it's their passion, but because of student loans or family circumstances, they can't afford to teach. And so we're leaving so much talent on the table, we're losing so much talent. I think the consequences of that are devastating for young people, for our country, for education. So that's the starting premise. How we get there is harder. These are tough economic times. But I think we have to think very differently about how we use existing resources. With one example. I'll give you a quick quiz I always ask. What do you think we spend at the federal level on professional development each year? What's in our budget? Give me a guess.
Several million?
Several million. So we spend at the federal level $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion a year. The state and local level, you add it together, it's like $5 or $6 billion. When I say that to teachers, you guys usually laugh or cry when I say that. I'm glad you're laughing, some of you are probably crying. My point, you're not feeling that. That's not very effective. So can we print a whole bunch of more money? I wish we could. That's not easy. How do we use existing resources in very different ways? That's one pool of money we spend each year, $2.5 billion, that I lose sleep on. I don't think it's having the impact it could. Could some of that be used to start this conversation? And so I just challenge all of us to look at federal resources, look at state resources, look at local resources. We do lots of things in education. We rarely stop doing things and do other things. Are there existing pots of money that we could use in very different ways to start to move in this direction? I think there are. Give you another example. In Denver, Colorado, that's moved in this direction ahead of other folks because there's been so much teacher buy-in. It's a voluntary program. People could opt in or opt out. When they started, they had about 35% of teachers in. 5-6 years later, they have 85% of teachers in. Because of the progress the Denver public schools are making, they went back to to the city, to their taxpayers, for tax levy to increase salaries. And because of the progress they were seeing, taxpayers in a somewhat conservative area supported more money. So there are ways to get there. Is it easy? No. Is it going to happen tomorrow? But do we need to move in this direction? Absolutely. Just come up to the microphone, so we'll just take it. Just come on up.
Yes, sure. Hi, my name is Kathy Steinwettle. I'm the department chair at Hereford Middle. My question today is, how do you envision classifying and transitioning the veteran teachers into the new career pathways?
It's a great question. I just go back to the Denver example. I think it's really important that you give people a choice, that it be voluntary. And if someone is in their 25th or 30th year and isn't interested in doing this or doesn't want to, they shouldn't be forced to do it. And so I think something like a Denver system, an opt-in, where folks have the choice, whether they're a 30-year veteran or 10-year veteran or a second-year teacher, figure out what's the right path for them. And if there's an option there, and again, what we've seen in a place like Denver is over time, many teachers who were initially a little reluctant, a little scared, actually go in this direction. But I think it's got to be an option, not a forced situation.
Good morning, Secretary Duncan. I'm Janice Washington, and I'm a reading teacher at Sudbrook Magnet Middle School. And my interest is in closing the equity gap. And we were in a meeting yesterday, and at Sudbrook, we got our MSA scores, and we have successfully, at this point, seen a closing of the gap, the racial and the gender gap in reading especially. And that excites me because I've spent a lifetime working in equity. So what are we going to do? And I see our school as a model. What else can we do, or what is being done on the national level to advance closing this equity gap in all of our schools? Because to me that is showing real progress, and I'm just glad to sit in a meeting for a first time to begin to see that the gap is closing and not widening or staying as it is.
First, I want to give you and your colleagues a huge shout out and a thank you for that hard work. And I think that's the battle that brings so many of us into education, that we see children who might not come from the fanciest of homes or from the safest of communities, but they deserve the best. And if we don't close these gaps, we perpetuate poverty, we perpetuate social failure. If we close the gaps, we give young people, regardless of where they come from, a chance to do whatever they want going forward. No easy answer on it, a couple different things. First of all, I'm a huge believer in early childhood education. I I think if we're serious about closing achievement gaps, we have to start with our babies. We have far too many children who enter kindergarten who don't know the front of a book from the back of a book, who haven't been read to. That makes it very, very difficult for the best kindergarten teachers. I've said publicly, historically, our department was part of the problem there. We didn't invest enough in early childhood education. Over the past 2 years of Congress's support, we've put $600 million behind places that wanted to increase access in disadvantaged communities and make sure it's high quality. So it starts there. I think next step is getting the hardest working, the most committed teachers into the disadvantaged communities. Most districts have very few, if any, incentives, and frankly, lots of disincentives for those most effective teachers and principals to go work with the kids that need the most help. That can be in a place like this, that can be inner city Chicago, that can be on the Native American reservation that I visited recently in New Mexico, where it's hard to get great folks to go work there. So how do we fundamentally put in place structures so that the best talent hits the children, the communities who need the most help? What do we do in terms of wraparound services, after school, GED, ESL for parents, family literacy nights, family support, so that the entire community is engaged in helping students be successful? And then finally, I think one of the most important things we can do is to come out to a school like yours and listen and learn and tell that story. And for all the challenges we are facing as a country, education, they're huge challenges, I'm actually really hopeful, because I see places like your school, places all over the country that are beating the odds every single day. What we have not done in this country is take to scale what works. So a big part of, I think, our role is to hear those lessons, to share them, and to start those national conversations. The final thing I'll say is that I think there are far too many people who honestly in their hearts don't believe those gaps can be closed. And it's not just sort of an intellectual battle here. This comes in people's hearts. And I talk to lots of folks who, give me a whole bunch of reasons why children of color can't learn to be successful, why poor children can't learn to be successful. And that's a battle we have to continue to fight. The only way we win by that battle is by having proof points like what you guys are doing.
Great, thank you.
Good morning, Secretary Duncan. Good to see you, and I'm glad that I came after that question because mine is kind of in that vein. My name is Joshua Parker. I'm 2012 Maryland Teacher of the Year, and I'm also, thank you. But also, I am the Title I Gap Reduction Specialist. So what she was talking about, I'm going to begin doing in the schools that need the most help. My question is about the conversation. As teachers, sometimes we have a hard time selling ourselves and our needs in a way that is palatable to the general public. So how can we advocate for this Respect Project in the media, in the public space, to be effective?
Well, first of all, congratulations. To be Teacher of the Year anywhere is a pretty big accomplishment. To be Teacher of the Year in Maryland, that's a pretty big deal.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a stiff competition, so that's big time. Great question. No easy way to do it. I don't think it's so much selling yourselves. I think it's selling the importance of education to this country. It's selling what you're willing to do differently. But in order to do something differently, you should be rewarded in a very, very different way. And for me, there's always a trade-off that folks need to make. And I think the challenge for me, the challenge for all of us, frankly, as a country, is I just see education as an investment. I think all of you see education as an investment. We have a lot of folks who see education as an expense. And that's sort of the dichotomy. That's the battle that's being fought right now. But if you go out to the public and talk about all the other things you could be doing, talk about why you're doing this, talk about why you devoted your life to closing the achievement gap, you're not asking for a handout, you're not asking for anything, you're just asking for the respect that someone similarly talented, similarly committed, similarly extraordinary in their different fields of work, you just want to be in a similar position as them. That's not too much to ask. And so for me, it's not about beating people up. It's not about asking for a handout, but it's saying this is what's so important to our country. This is what I'm willing to do. Are you willing to meet me halfway? That's the conversation I want this country to have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I would like to follow up on the first question about salaries. And I really appreciate that you recognize that teachers are underpaid. My question is that our economy is turning into a service economy. We almost lost Detroit without the president's intervention with TARP. And on the other hand, we are involved with so many wars. Afghanistan is $2 billion a week, et cetera. How can the federal government support education if we keep spending money overseas on wars?
So I'm not the Secretary of Defense, and I'm probably not the expert on this one. And I think you probably know where my heart is. But I'll just say what we've tried to do, and we've tried to lead by example, and I expect you to hold us accountable. So in a really tough economic time, when the president has flatlined or cut a lot of domestic spending, he's increased education funding every single year and is asking for an additional $1.7 billion for education. We haven't talked about college opportunities here. One of the things I'm most proud of is we got an additional $40 billion for Pell Grants over the next decade without going back to taxpayers for a nickel. Stop subsidizing banks, put all that money into Pell Grants, gone from 6 million Pell recipients 2 years ago to 9.6 million, more than 50% increase. Vast majority, or many first-generation college goers. So we have to lead by example. We're trying to walk the walk. But as you guys know, education funding in the K-12 space, it's usually 8 to 10% at the federal level, usually half it from the states, 40% at the local level. So you need to hold everyone accountable. Presidents, governors, mayors, county supervisors. It's interesting to me, everyone says they want to be the education whatever. Lots of folks talk the talk but don't walk the walk. I think the big thing is for all of you and the broader public, if every elected official really put their money where their mouth was, we would be in a very different position. And then the final thing I'll say, obviously on the wars is, thank goodness for lots of reasons, those wars are winding down and present some opportunities going forward.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Joy Cooper, and our country is data-driven, and we often reduce our students and our teachers to a number. My question is, how do we maintain accountability without losing the essence of humanity in teaching and learning?
It's a great question. So one of the things I just really resented about No Child Left Behind, I lived on the other side of the law for 7.5 years when I ran the Chicago Public Schools, is this obsession with one test score, a proficiency cut score, just made no sense to me. So that's why we wanted to fix the law. Didn't work. That's why we've done the waivers. But let me just give you some examples of what states are doing. You're looking at growth and gain. But you're looking way beyond test scores. You have states looking at what are they doing with graduation rates? What are they doing to reduce dropout rates? What are they doing to increase the number of students taking and passing AP classes? What are you doing to increase the number of students going to college? What are you doing to increase the number of students not just going to college but persevering? What are you doing to reduce the number of students going to college needing remedial classes? I always say you could have the best third grade test scores in the world, but if you have a 50% dropout rate, you can't go get a job with your third grade test score. And so my point is, I want to look at long-term trends. You guys know if young people drop out today, they're basically condemned to poverty and social failure. There are almost no good jobs if you just have a high school diploma, some form of higher education, 4-year universities, 2-year community colleges, trade, technical, vocational training. So I call those outcomes. I want us to become much more focused on outcomes. And then you can look at what the district or the state or the school or the teacher and the parent, what are we doing to contribute to getting those things, having all those trends go in the right direction. So I never want to retreat from data. I just want to look at it in a much more comprehensive way. And I always talk about multiple measures, and all of these are going to be imperfect. None of them are, but I always say we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. But looking at sort of what the long-term trends are and what are the outcomes, what are we aiming for, to me, that gets away from just the obsession with a percent of kids at or above a state level.
Thank you.
Good morning, Secretary Duncan. My name is Patricia Brown. I'm the English Department and Reading Chairman at Towson High School. We were, in 2011, named a National Blue Ribbon School. Thank you very much. I want to piggyback on two of my colleagues that have come in and ask an even more close-to-home question. By the way, welcome, Team English. Given the charges that you have given in respect, in terms of creating global citizens, critical thinkers, people who will be able to compete on a global market, and the core curriculum, and writing argument, and complex text, and close reading, and being able to develop short, focused research, what are the implications on that national American entrenched custom of tracking in the everyday classroom?
We have to fight it. We have to fight it. And so I always say our students have to be college and career ready. And lots of folks sort of say those are, a dichotomy or fighting each other. We actually know the skills are very, very similar for both those things. And I think the argument between them is wrong. I would argue as a country, far too few of our children today are college ready, and far too few are career ready. And this is not about tracking kids as other countries do when they're 10 or 11 or 12 or 14 and say, you're college material or you're not. It's about putting children in a position where they have options, where they have choices, and they can figure out what they want to do. And obviously, if any of you have paid an auto mechanic lately or a plumber lately, as I have, they're doing better than a lot of us. And there's no one right way to, one right path. So for me, it's college and career ready. We have to get away from tracking. We have to give young people options and let them figure out what path they want to take. And maybe it's working for a while and going back to school. Maybe it's going to school and then working, whatever it might be. But it's got to be both and, not either or.
Thank you.
Good morning, Secretary Duncan. My name is Jacob Belknap. I work at Old Court Middle School. And from a liberal arts background, I understand the importance of public speaking and being able to communicate very strongly, and have heard that from the business world as well. My question for you, when you had said that your worldview, education, which is well-rounded, is very necessary, I'm interested in how you see that being integrated with the STEM-focused education that seems to be very popular currently.
Yeah, so I always try and talk about a well-rounded world-class education. I think one of the problems under No Child Left Behind was the narrowing of the curriculum. And I've heard that from teachers, principals, parents, students everywhere across the country. And so that for me means lots of things. I always, science, social studies, dance, drama, art, music, PE, academic decathlon, debate, whatever it might be. And for me, you have to do those things not just in the high school level, but starting in second and third and fourth grade. So the question is, in tough economic times, when extracurriculars start to get cut, and art starts to get cut, and PE starts to get cut, how do we fight those things? And again, I just continue to think we have to invest, and we have to step up and say this is an investment, not an expense. But when we narrow the curriculum, yes, reading is fundamental, math is fundamental, lots of interest in STEM fields, but whenever we narrow, I just think we take away from our kids' potential. And you never know what's going to spark that child's interest in coming to school, and it's going to be very different things. So the more you have that as the norm, it always amazes me if you go to a well-funded private school, that's the norm. That's the norm. That's not sort of an extracurricular. That's just part of the normal school day. So easier said than done in tough economic times of building a well-rounded world-class system starting in 6 and 7 and 8-year-olds, not 14, 15, 16-year-olds. That's where as a country, that's where we have to go and get back to as quickly as we can.
All right, thank you.
Last two, then I'll speak down.
Secretary Duncan, my name is Julie Boyden. I'm a special educator and English teacher at Pikesville High School. And I hope I'm not being redundant here about career readiness, but my question has to do with vocational training. I feel like even in the best of circumstances with kids learning and the high expectations we're holding for them academically, there are students that are not necessarily motivated to go to college, but are highly motivated to work, and maybe even the circumstances in their family make it necessary for them to work. I was wondering if there were what your perspective or President Obama's perspective were on getting kids in high school hands-on training at that time.
No, it's a great question. We should have talked about it earlier. I think it's one of the areas, honestly, as a country, we were probably better in the 60s and 70s than we are today. Somehow we've walked away from this. We're a huge proponent. We spend about $1 billion a year here. He's actually asking Congress to double that to $2 billion. We want to invest a lot more in CTE. We actually have on our website a blueprint for reauthorizing the Perkins Act. Brenda Dan Messier is my point person on this. She would love to come out and sort of talk extensively about this. But again, to me, it's not just, again, at the high school level. I want to start at the middle schools to start to expose students to a whole series of careers. And then again, not track, not force, not say this is your path, but say here's a set of options for you to think about and help them understand the relevance of what they're learning in class to the real world. And I think that disconnect is why so many students start to lose motivation, lose interest in school. So we have to get much better in the career and technical space. As you said, it's got to be some form of higher education beyond that. There's a lot of advanced training, advanced manufacturing, but those are extraordinarily well-paying jobs. Many places are looking to hire now. They don't want to ship those jobs overseas. And the honest answer is we, as an education system in the country, aren't producing enough young people that employers are looking for. And we have a tough economic time. I keep asking the question, do we have a jobs crisis or do we have a skills crisis? I'm more and more convinced we have a skills crisis, and CTE is a part of that solution.
Thank you.
Good morning, Secretary Duncan. My name is Nicole Brown Fordham. I'm a teacher at Woodlawn High School. We are pushed into technology. We want to gear our students for a 21st century education. My question is, what resources are you going to provide across the board? And are those resources going to be universal from your top performing school to your low performing school?
So this is actually a really interesting one where across the administration we've tried to do a lot. So I'll tell you what we've tried to do, but with commerce, with other departments, surprisingly Department of Agriculture, we've done a ton to try and increase broadband access in rural and remote communities and still have a long way to go. FCC has been a really, really good partner here. This is an area where the reality is we don't have a huge amount of additional funds to put into this, but again, trying to think a little bit differently, and this is hard. Another quick pop quiz. What do we spend on textbooks each year as a country?
You got a number? I think she's trying to give me the answer. 5.2 billion?
What's that? 22 million?
2 billion.
5.2 billion. You've done some homework, yeah. probably a little bit more than that. But let me just give you one example. So there's a district, very interesting district called Mooresville, North Carolina. It's a rural, some people know Mooresville. There are 117 districts in North Carolina. They are funded as the 100th. So they're funded poorly. They've basically made the switch from print to digital. No new money. This is a rural community. They had to stop doing a set of things, which we're not good in education of stopping doing things. They're still early on in this, but in the past couple of years, they've had some extraordinary results. And part of the answer has been universal access to technology. Lots of other things. Great PD, visionary superintendent, everyone bought into this program. My point is that if we're looking for a huge source of new money to do this, that's not going to come. But the question is, should we be moving from print to digital as fast as we can? I think the answer is absolutely. There are other countries that have committed that by 2015 they will have no more textbooks. So my question is, are we going to lead or are we going to follow here? And so I can't promise you new money. I'd be lying to you. When you think about that 5.2, or I actually think it's like 6 or 7 or 8 billion, can we start to repurpose some of that or all of that very quickly so that universal access will be there and every child will have a tool? Check out what Mooresville, North Carolina has done. Look at their results in terms of not just test scores, but graduation rates going up, dropout rates going down. This is not an affluent community. This is not a community where a lot of parents have gone to college. They're building a college-going culture. Technology is a big piece of the answer. They've figured out how to do it. Not easy, tough choices, but it's happening there and it's happening in other places. It's the kind of example I think we need to learn from.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, guys. Best of luck on Monday. Thanks for having me today.